Welcome back, you night owls. Tonight we're going to dim the lights on something a little different, a little darker, but still steeped in the kind of human drama that feels both ancient and entirely relatable. Tonight, we're going to unravel the true story behind a secret that was kept for 600 years. A quiet, pervasive dread that haunted the daughters of the Ottoman Empire. You'll be stepping into their world, feeling the silks and velvets of their gowns, and hearing the faint, distant drums of a celebration that was anything but joyful for the one person it was meant to honour. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, why not drop your location and local time in the comments? It's always a treat to see just how far this little corner of the internet stretches. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Imagine yourself in a palace in 16th century Istanbul. The air is thick with the scent of jasmine and cypress, and the weight of your silk kaftan feels both opulent and suffocating. You're a princess, a daughter of the Sultan, which sounds like something out of a fairy tale, right? Gold, jewels, slaves to attend to your every whim. But as you watch the sun set over the Bosphorus, casting the city in a soft, fiery glow, your stomach is a cold knot of dread. Tonight is your wedding night, the culmination of a political arrangement that has been years in the making. But this isn't a story of a princess and a prince, a love forged in secret and sealed with a kiss. This is a tale of power, betrayal, and a very specific quiet terror that was a fact of life for the most privileged women in the world. You probably think you know the wedding night horror stories of old, but I can promise you, you won't survive this one, at least not in the way you expect. The reason for this fear, this deep-seated anxiety, isn't what you might think. It wasn't about the physical act itself, or the loss of innocence in a world where women's bodies were already considered state property. No, the fear was far more existential. It was the fear of your husband. Not because he was a stranger, though he was, but because he was a political appointee, a man who, no matter how kind or gentle he might seem, lived under a permanent unspoken death sentence. For the Ottoman Empire, dynastic security was everything, and to ensure that no son-in-law could ever use his royal connection to seize power, the sultans implemented a chilling, unwritten rule. Marry a princess, and you forfeit your life the moment the sultan decides you're no longer useful. A mainstream historical fact that many people don't realise is that these marriages were a crucial tool for the sultan to control his top military and political officials. By marrying his daughters to these powerful men, the viziers, pashas and generals, he bound them to the imperial family, creating a web of loyalty, but also of intense life-threatening pressure. A quirky, almost unbelievable tidbit from this era is the practice of gifting the princess's husband a lavish palace, often far grander than his own, and a large stipend. This might sound like a sweet deal, but it was a gilded cage. Every gift, every title, every bit of wealth was a subtle reminder that his entire existence, his prosperity, and his life were at the whim of one man, the Sultan, his father-in-law. Imagine being so rich, so powerful, and yet knowing that the rug could be pulled out from under you at any moment. Your wife, the beautiful princess you were just wed to, was your greatest asset and your biggest liability. Her existence was the only thing standing between you and the executioner's cord. Historians still argue whether this was a true policy or a series of coincidental actions, but the consistent pattern of these men meeting untimely ends suggests a deliberate strategy, a chillingly effective method of control. You can almost feel the air growing colder in the chamber as you change into your wedding night clothes. The silks slide against your skin, and the jewels feel heavy, almost like shackles. You're not thinking about love or family or the future. You're thinking about your father, a man who, loves you in his own way, loves you as a symbol of his power, a pawn in a game of chess that spans continents. And you're thinking about the man who will soon enter this room. He's a stranger, but not just any stranger. He's a man whose life is now intertwined with yours in the most dangerous way possible. His ambition, his success, his every move from this point forward will be viewed through the lens of one question. Is he a threat to the throne? This marriage isn't about creating a new family, it's about cementing the old one. The imperial family of the Ottomans was a fortress, and every alliance was a stone in its walls. But sometimes those stones had to be sacrificed to keep the rest of the structure from crumbling. You, the princess, are that sacrifice. You are the living, breathing connection that ensures the vizier stays loyal, that the governor doesn't rebel, and your husband is the man whose very survival depends on his unwavering absolute loyalty. Any sign of independent thought, any whisper of ambition that strays from his assigned role, and his life could be over, and you would be a widow, a symbol of your father's ruthlessness, a lesson to all who would dare to challenge him. The wedding night, therefore, wasn't a beginning, it was a test, a prelude to a life of perpetual anxiety, for you and for him, under the shadow of the Sultan's will. As the door to your chamber swings open, a cold draught sweeps in, carrying with it the scents of the palace gardens and the distant music of the celebration. The man who enters is a powerful vizier, a man who has commanded armies and negotiated peace treaties, but in your eyes, he is just a man whose heart must be racing even faster than yours. He knows what's at stake. He knows what it means to be a son-in-law of the Sultan. He knows that his life is no longer his own. And as he takes your hand, you feel not the warmth of a new beginning, but the tremor of a shared quiet terror. The marriage is not the destination. It is the starting point of a journey down a path lined with danger, a path you will walk together, but never truly as equals. The fear you feel is a tangible thing, a constant companion. It's in the rustle of the leaves in the palace gardens, in the silence that falls when a messenger arrives from the Sultan, in the way your husband's eyes flicker with a hint of tension when he speaks of his duties. This is the reality of your life, the price of your golden cage. And as the night unfolds, you understand that this fear, this quiet dread, is not just your own. It is a legacy you share with every princess who came before you, and every princess who will come after. It is the secret of the Ottoman princesses, a secret buried not in a vault, but in their very bones, and a truth that shaped their lives in ways we can only begin to imagine. Welcome back to the whispered corridors of the Ottoman court, where the glint of gold and the shimmer of silk couldn't quite mask the chill in the air. We left you on the threshold of your wedding chamber, a princess caught between the splendour of your birthright and the chilling reality of your fate. But to truly understand the dread that knots your stomach, we need to rewind, all the way back to the moment you were born. Your life wasn't a journey, it was a carefully plotted trajectory, a direct line from cradle to political marriage. From the moment you, the daughter of the Sultan, took your first breath, you weren't a child to be loved and nurtured for your own sake. You were a precious asset, a diplomatic tool, and a living, breathing extension of the Sultan's power. This gilded existence began in the harem, a word that probably conjures up images of sultry dances and forbidden pleasures, but in reality was a highly structured, fiercely guarded world of women. The harem was your entire universe, a self-contained city of marble courtyards, trickling fountains and hidden gardens. You didn't just live here, you were raised, educated, and trained for your singular purpose. While a mainstream historical fact is that the harem was home to the Sultan's mother, his wives, concubines, and children, it was also the primary school for the imperial princesses. Your days were a relentless cycle of lessons. You learned to read and write, of course, but also a dizzying array of skills: foreign languages, poetry, music, and the delicate art of needlework. You were taught protocol, etiquette, and the nuances of court politics. Every lesson was designed to make you a perfect, polished piece in the Sultan's great game of empire. A quirky detail that historians love to debate is the exact nature of the harem's educational curriculum. Some scholars argue it was a genuinely progressive, albeit restrictive, form of female empowerment, creating women who were not just beautiful ornaments, but clever, well-read, and politically savvy. Others contend that this education was a form of subtle control, teaching the princesses to navigate the system without ever truly challenging it, grooming them to be obedient assets rather than independent thinkers. You can almost hear the soft rustle of silk as you sit in a sun-drenched courtyard, a tutor droning on about Persian poetry, and you wonder, is this knowledge a shield, or just another, more elaborate kind of chain? Your world was one of immense luxury, but also of profound isolation. You were showered with jewels and clothing, attended by a small army of eunuchs and slaves. But you lived in a space with no men other than your father, your brothers, and the ever-present eunuchs. You never saw the bustling streets of Istanbul, never felt the gritty, vibrant chaos of the Grand Bazaar. Your knowledge of the outside world came from the stories of your tutors and the carefully curated news that filtered through the harem walls. You knew about the great battles your father won, the grand mosques he commissioned, and the political alliances he forged, all of which were directly tied to your future. Your childhood was a paradox, a life of unlimited comfort and utterly no freedom. You were a delicate, exotic bird in a beautiful cage, and everyone expected you to sing on command. This strict upbringing was all a prelude to the main event, your marriage. For an Ottoman princess, marriage wasn't about love or companionship. It was a matter of state. Your father, the Sultan, used his daughters as living treaties, sealing peace with rival powers or, more often, cementing the loyalty of his most powerful subjects. This brings us to a crucial, often overlooked historical fact. The Ottoman Sultan often married his daughters to the most ambitious, high-ranking officials in his court. Think of the Grand Vizier, the head of the army, the governor of a key province. These men held immense power and could, theoretically, become a threat to the throne. By marrying a princess, they were brought into the fold, bound by blood to the imperial family. The title that came with this marriage, Damat, meaning son-in-law, was a double-edged sword, a mark of immense favour and an unspoken warning. Historians still debate the exact psychological effect this had on the princesses. Did they feel a sense of patriotic duty, a quiet pride in knowing they were serving the empire in a way no man could? Or was it a deep, gnawing resentment, a feeling of being used and discarded for a purpose that had nothing to do with their own happiness? You might have moments of pride hearing the whispers of your name in the harem, knowing that your marriage will bring peace to a rebellious province. But then a quiet thought creeps in. What if the peace fails? What if your husband falls out of favour? The weight of the empire rests not just on the Sultan's shoulders, but on yours as well, a weight you've been carrying since before you could walk. This rigorous grooming also meant that your understanding of the world was highly filtered. You were taught to be dignified, to be poised, to be the perfect symbol of Ottoman majesty, but you were never taught to be a person outside of that role. So when the time came for your wedding, when the official announcement was made and the grand preparations began, you were ready in every possible way, except for the one that mattered most. You were ready for the public spectacle, the lavish ceremonies, the procession. You were ready to be a princess. But you were not ready for the reality of being a woman married to a man whose life was perpetually in danger. Imagine one of your daily lessons, perhaps in the art of the delicate fan dance. Your tutor, a woman who has lived her entire life within the harem walls, is explaining the precise movements, the subtle gestures, and you, a young girl, are practicing, your face a mask of serene concentration. But a rebellious thought flickers in the back of your mind. What's the point? This beautiful dance is for an audience you may never see, a public you will only encounter through the heavily veiled window of your carriage. This dance is not for you. It is for them, a performance of grace and subservience. This is your entire life, a series of performances meant to uphold an image, to serve a purpose far larger than yourself. And so, as the wedding procession is planned, and the distant sounds of celebration begin to reach your gilded cage, you're a product of your environment. You're elegant, educated, and entirely prepared to be a princess. But you're also a prisoner of your birth, a woman whose entire existence has been geared toward one night and one man, a man whose life is a borrowed one, and who is the physical embodiment of the quiet terror you feel. Your world has been small and safe, but now you are being pushed out into the great, dangerous, and unpredictable world of Ottoman politics, a world where your husband's love, or lack thereof, matters far less than his continued survival. And you know, deep down, that his survival is a fragile thing, balanced on a knife's edge held by your father. The golden cage, you realise, has prepared you for this moment, but it has not insulated you from its dangers. It has merely made you a more valuable prize in a game where the loser forfeits their life. You are in your sedan chair, draped in velvet, a veil concealing your face from the adoring, or perhaps just curious crowd. The procession to your new life has begun. Your world, once confined to the high walls of the harem, is now a moving spectacle on the grand avenues of Istanbul. But as the cheers of the public fade into a distant hum, and the rhythmic footfalls of the bearers lull you into a trance, your mind drifts back to the real reason for this opulent charade. Peace. Not the peace that settles in a quiet room, but the cold, hard peace of political expediency. a mainstream historical fact is that Ottoman princesses were a key component of the Sultan's foreign and domestic policy. They were more than just symbols, they were living, breathing diplomatic documents. When a foreign power, say a European kingdom, wanted to forge a durable alliance with the formidable Ottoman Empire, a marriage was often on the table. But more commonly, these marriages were used to manage the Sultan's own powerful subjects. When a governor of a distant province became too popular, too rich, or too independent, the Sultan had a choice. He could order his execution, a risky move that could spark a rebellion. Or he could offer him the hand of his daughter in marriage. The second option was almost always chosen, a gilded invitation to enter the fold, to be bound by blood to the imperial family. It was a strategy of integration, and it was a masterpiece of political calculation. A quirky detail of this process was the dowry. You, the princess, weren't just a bride. You were a walking treasury. Your dowry wasn't just gold and jewels, it could include entire properties, lucrative tax revenues from villages, or even a controlling interest in a specific industry. These lavish gifts were a powerful incentive for the groom, a reward for his loyalty, but they were also a clever way for the Sultan to transfer immense wealth without directly sharing power. The gifts were tied to you, the princess, and through you, to the Sultan. If your husband ever displeased your father, not only would he lose his life, but all the wealth he gained through the marriage would revert back to the imperial family. So your dowry, which looked like a magnificent gift, was in reality a lease agreement with a very specific and very deadly termination clause. You can almost feel the weight of this deal on your shoulders. The diamond necklace around your neck feels like a contract, each facet a clause in an agreement you never signed. You know, without being told that your happiness is not a variable in this equation. The success of this marriage is not measured in smiles or shared moments, but in the absence of rebellion and the stability of the Sultan's reign. This is the truth of being a royal pawn, a piece moved on a chessboard of empires where your feelings are irrelevant and your person is a tool. Historians still argue whether these marriages were a sign of the Sultan's strength or a symptom of his deep-seated paranoia. Was it a sophisticated method of control, born of confidence in his own power? Or was it an act of self-preservation, a preemptive strike against potential rivals in a court where a wrong move could cost him the throne? You are the answer to that question. You are the embodiment of your father's power, his ability to bend the most powerful men in the empire to his will. The man waiting for you at the end of this procession is a powerful vizier, a man who has commanded armies, a man who could, under different circumstances, be a rival to your family. But tonight he is a husband, a son-in-law, a damat, and his power is now inextricably linked to yours, and by extension, to your father's. You remember your father's face, his eyes distant and calculating, as he told you of the man you were to marry. He spoke of his virtues, his military genius, his loyalty to the state. But you knew what he meant. He was a man with too much power who needed to be brought into the family. Your brothers, the princes, were a different story. Their marriages were often more personal affairs, arranged with other royal families to forge powerful alliances. But for you, the daughter of the Sultan, marriage was a domestic affair, a tool to keep the men closest to the throne in line. This is a cold reality, but it's the one you were born into. You were raised with this knowledge, not in words, but in the silent, pervasive atmosphere of the harem. The whispers of the elder princesses, the hushed tones of the tutors, the way your father's eyes would linger on you during state dinners. It was all a lesson in your purpose. This brings us to another chilling aspect of the political marriage, the fear of widowhood. A princess who outlived her husband was a free agent, a woman with immense wealth and prestige. She was no longer a pawn, but a player in her own right. This freedom, however, was a double-edged sword. While it gave her a degree of independence, it also meant she was a potential source of instability, a person the Sultan could not easily control. This is perhaps why many of these marriages were designed to be short-lived, either through the husband's natural death in battle or more sinisterly through a quiet, unseen hand. The Sultan's control was absolute, and he would not tolerate a powerful woman who was not under his direct command. So as you sit in your carriage, the rhythmic swaying lulling you into a state of resigned acceptance, you think of the man waiting for you. He is a stranger, a soldier, a statesman. But he is also a prisoner, a man whose freedom has been traded for power, and whose life now hangs by a thread. He may be kind, he may be cruel, but in the end it matters little. He is a pawn, just like you, and the two of you are about to be joined in a union that has nothing to do with love and everything to do with the Sultan's relentless quest for control. You are the price of peace, the living embodiment of a dynastic strategy so ruthless it ensured the Sultan's power for centuries. And as the carriage comes to a halt, you take a deep breath, the jasmine scent from your bouquet, a stark contrast to the cold knot of dread in your stomach. The spectacle is about to end, and the real terror is about to begin. The carriage has stopped. The doors are opened by a pair of solemn-faced eunuchs, and you are led into the palace that will now be your home. Your new home, but also his. The man who is now your husband stands waiting, a figure of immense power and prestige. This is the Grand Vizier, a man who commands armies, a man who sits at the right hand of the Sultan himself. But as he bows low before you, a gesture of deep respect and deference, you notice a subtle tremor in his hand. It's a fleeting moment, but it tells you everything you need to know. He is not a conqueror. He is a supplicant. A mainstream historical fact is that the Ottoman Empire had a strict social hierarchy, and no matter how high an official rose, he was still ultimately a servant of the Sultan. This was never more apparent than in the process of marrying a princess. Before he was even considered for the honour of your hand, your groom would have undergone a rigorous, almost humiliating vetting process. This wasn't a romantic courtship. It was an interrogation. The Sultan's spies and advisors would have scrutinised every aspect of his life, his wealth, his political alliances, his loyalty to the throne, even his personal habits. A quirky tidbit from the era is that the Sultan would often send a trusted emissary to observe the potential groom in his daily life, to gauge his temperament, his generosity, and his ambition. Was he overly ambitious? Did he show signs of independent thought? Was he too popular with the people? These were not just idle questions, they were a matter of life and death. You remember the whispers in the harem, the nervous chatter of the elder women. They spoke of a previous Grand Vizier who had been considered for a princess's hand. He was a brilliant military strategist, beloved by his men, but the Sultan's spies reported that he was overly confident, that he spoke of his victories with too much pride, as if they were his own and not a gift from God and the Sultan. The marriage was called off, and soon after, the vizier was transferred to a remote minor province. His career effectively ended. It was a lesson, a warning to all who dared to forget their place. Historians still argue whether this process of vetting was truly about finding a suitable husband for the princess, or if it was simply another tool of control, a way to keep the most powerful men in the empire on a short leash. You can't help but wonder, did your father care if this man was kind to you? Did he care if you would be happy? You know the answer. The only thing that mattered was his loyalty, his obedience, and his usefulness to the state. The groom's journey to your side was not a path to love, but a passage through a series of tests, each more rigorous than the last. He had to prove not his worthiness as a partner, but his worthiness as a subordinate. The groom's humiliation didn't end with the vetting process. The marriage itself was a public spectacle designed to reinforce his subservience. He would arrive at the palace in a grand procession, but unlike a typical groom, he wouldn't be the centre of attention. All eyes would be on you, the princess, the true star of the show. He would have to wait for you, often for hours, and then bow low before you in a gesture that symbolised his lifelong subordination to the imperial family. He was a Grand Vizier, a man of power, but in this moment, he was nothing more than a servant marrying his master's daughter. You can almost feel the tension in the room as you finally meet. Your hand, draped in a delicate handkerchief, is extended to him. He takes it, and his fingers are cold even through the silk. You are the embodiment of his new life, a life of immense privilege but also of constant nagging terror. He knows that his continued existence depends not on his military genius or his political cunning, but on his relationship with you, and more importantly, with your father. You are his patron, his protector, and the ultimate reason for his downfall if he should ever displease the Sultan. This is the great paradox of the Ottoman Damat. He was given immense wealth and power, but at the cost of his autonomy. He was a vizier, a pasha, a general, a man who commanded armies and ruled provinces. But in the eyes of the Sultan, he was just a son-in-law, a man who had been chosen to serve the imperial family. and as a servant, his life was not his own. The Sultan's word was law, and the slightest suspicion of disloyalty could lead to a swift and brutal end. Remember that crocodile dung sunscreen? That was a bad choice. This is a life or death decision. The groom's position was so precarious that many of them, historians note, were in a constant state of anxiety. They would be so careful, so deferential, so utterly subservient to the Sultan that they would almost seem like shadows of their former selves. Their ambition, which had once propelled them to the highest echelons of power, was now a liability, a fire that had to be constantly suppressed. They were living proof of the Sultan's absolute power, a constant reminder to all other officials that their lives were not their own. And as you stand before him, taking in the man who will be your husband, you feel a flicker of pity. He's a man who has risen to the pinnacle of power, only to find that the view from the top is a terrifying one. He has traded his freedom for a golden leash, and now he is bound to you, the princess, a woman he doesn't know and may never truly understand. His journey to your side was not a triumphant procession, but a humbling pilgrimage. He is a man who has already lost something, even before he has gained his new life. And as you walk together into the next room, you know that the journey has only just begun, and the price of his new life has yet to be fully paid. The wedding feast is a blur of colour and music. The air is heavy with the scent of roasted lamb and sweet pastries, and the strains of lutes and drums echo through the palace halls. You sit at the head of the banquet table, a beautiful, silent centrepiece. Your husband, the powerful Grand Vizier, sits next to you. He's engaged in conversation with the other dignitaries, a smile plastered on his face. But if you look closely, you can see the tension in his jaw, the way his eyes dart around the room, never truly resting. He is a man who is supposed to be celebrating, but he is acting like a man on a battlefield, constantly vigilant, always on guard. This is the great paradox of his life as your husband. He has risen to the highest position in the empire, short of the Sultan himself, but in doing so, he has put his neck on the chopping block. A mainstream historical fact is that the Ottoman sultans were notoriously ruthless when it came to maintaining power, and a son-in-law was a convenient and effective target for their paranoia. The Damat, your husband, was given immense power and wealth, but he was also made an example of. His every action was scrutinised, his every word weighed, not just by your father's spies, but by his rivals, his enemies, and even his supposed friends. Remember that crocodile dung sunscreen? A bad choice. Your husband's choices are far more perilous. A wrong word, a misplaced glance, a moment of independent thought could be misconstrued as disloyalty. And in the Ottoman court, disloyalty was a capital offence. A quirky and particularly chilling tidbit is that the Sultan would often test his sons-in-law by giving them impossible tasks, or putting them in situations where their loyalty was questioned. For example, he might assign a Damat to a military campaign with insufficient resources, and then watch to see how he handled the inevitable defeat. If the Damat complained, he was seen as disloyal and could be executed. If he accepted the blame without question, he was seen as a faithful servant and his life was spared, at least for a time. Historians still argue whether this was a deliberate policy of psychological torment or simply a consequence of a deeply paranoid and violent political culture. You don't have to be a historian to see the fear in your husband's eyes. You can see it in the way he laughs a little too loudly at the Sultan's jokes, the way he praises his every decision, the way he deflects any conversation about his own accomplishments. He is a man who has mastered the art of survival, but survival in this context means being a shadow of his former self, a man who has given up his identity for the sake of his life. His position as a powerless partner to your power is the ultimate paradox. He is the Grand Vizier, but he is a vizier in name only. His true power comes not from his title or his military genius, but from his relationship with you, the princess, and through you, with your father. Your existence is his only shield, and he knows deep down that a shield can be discarded the moment it is no longer needed. The Sultan can choose to take back your hand, to annul the marriage, or to have him quietly removed from the world. A sultan's will was absolute, and for your husband, a powerful man in every other sense of the word, his powerlessness was his greatest peril. You are a child of the court. You understand the rules of this game implicitly. Your brothers, the princes, were raised with the knowledge that they were rivals, that their lives were a constant competition for their father's favour. Your husband is now part of that brutal game, but with a crucial difference. He is not a prince. He cannot inherit the throne. He is a pawn who can be sacrificed at any time for any reason. The only thing that separates him from the executioner's cord is the Sultan's whim. He is a man who has everything and nothing all at once. Imagine for a moment the conversation he must have had with his own family before the wedding. His mother, perhaps, warning him of the dangers. His father, a wise old vizier, telling him to be cautious, to be a shadow, to never stand out. These were not the words of a proud father sending his son off to a happy marriage. They were the instructions of a man sending his son into a lion's den, a den where the most dangerous lion was his new father-in-law. This is the reality of his life, a reality that makes the wedding feast feel like a wake, a beautiful, lavish, and utterly terrifying celebration of a life that is no longer his own. As the music swells and the guests raise their glasses in a toast to your future, you look at your husband. His smile is a little too fixed, his laughter a little too strained. He is a man who has made a deal with the devil, and now he is living with the consequences. You feel a pang of something akin to pity, not just for him, but for yourself. For you too are caught in this web of power and paranoia. Your happiness, your security, and your very life are now inextricably linked to this man, this powerful, perilous stranger. The wedding night, you realise, is not just a test of your courage, but a test of your ability to navigate this new, dangerous world. And as the feast draws to a close, you know that the real test is still to come, a test that will determine whether your husband, and by extension you, will survive the night and the years to come. The last echo of the wedding celebration has faded, but the memory of the procession lingers. You remember the roar of the crowd, a single, sustained sound that felt like the voice of the entire city. It was a beautiful, overwhelming moment, a testament to the might and splendour of the Ottoman Empire. And you, the princess, were at the very heart of it. A mainstream historical fact about these royal weddings is that the procession was an elaborate and meticulously choreographed public event, not just a way to get the bride from one palace to another. It was a grand piece of political theatre, designed to impress the populace and foreign dignitaries alike with the unassailable power and immense wealth of the Sultan. Your carriage, a gilded masterpiece adorned with gems and gold, was a moving throne. You were invisible behind a fine embroidered silk veil, but the crowd knew you were there, a living symbol of their Sultan's benevolence and might. The procession was a rolling showcase of the Empire's might. You were preceded by columns of the elite Janissary Corps, their silver armour gleaming in the sun. Behind them came the royal musicians, their trumpets and drums creating a thunderous rhythm. The horses, draped in embroidered silks, pranced with an almost theatrical grace. A quirky detail of these processions was the inclusion of gift-bearers. These weren't just servants carrying presents. They were hundreds of men carrying aloft the lavish dowry, an endless parade of jewelled chests, gold-inlaid furniture, and velvet cushions piled high with coins. It was a spectacle of obscene wealth, and it was meant to be. The procession was a declaration. The Sultan is so rich, so powerful, that he can give away this much wealth in a single day, and it will not even make a dent. You, however, were not a part of this show. You were the show. Your presence was the reason for the parade, but your person was merely a conduit for the display of power. It's a subtle but crucial distinction. The procession was not a celebration of your marriage, it was a celebration of your father's ability to control and command. And as your carriage moved through the crowded streets, you knew that the public spectacle was a clever distraction, a beautiful lie designed to mask the terrifying truth of what was to come. You were a sacrifice, wrapped in gold and carried through the streets like a prize. Historians still argue whether the public truly understood the political nature of these marriages. Did the common person, watching this dazzling parade, see a happy princess on her way to a new life? Or did they see a political arrangement, a transaction of power and prestige? You could almost hear the whispered words of the crowd as you passed by, the mixture of awe and pity, of admiration for the splendour, and a quiet, knowing understanding of the real-world implications. This beautiful display of power was a facade, a public face for a very private and very dangerous reality. The carriage finally came to a halt. The noise of the crowd, once a deafening roar, was now a muffled hum. The doors were opened, and you were led into the palace that would be your new home. This was not the Sultan's palace. but a lavish new residence given to your husband as part of your dowry. It was a testament to his new status as a damat, a son-in-law of the Sultan. But as you walk through the magnificent rooms, you could almost feel the weight of the gift, the invisible strings attached to every ornate piece of furniture, every priceless painting. Your husband, who had just been publicly honoured with this magnificent home, was now a prisoner within its walls. He had no real power here. This was not his home. It was a royal property, a fortress where your every move, and his, would be watched. Your servants were loyal to you, and through you, to the Sultan. His own staff, the ones he brought with him from his old life, were now under your authority. This was a clever and deeply unsettling aspect of the marriage. The Sultan had not only bound his most powerful official with blood, he had also placed a loyal and powerful spy, you, in his home, a constant reminder of his subordinate position. This is the great irony of the procession. The public saw a Grand Vizier receiving a magnificent home and a beautiful princess. But you, the princess, knew the truth. The home was a jail, the dowry was a leash, and the princess was a warden. Your husband, the powerful statesman, had been publicly humbled and stripped of his autonomy, all under the guise of a beautiful celebration. You remember your father's face as he watched the procession from a high window of the Sultan's palace. He wasn't smiling. He was watching his plan unfold, a cold, calculating expression on his face. He was not a father sending his daughter off to a happy life. He was a ruler securing his power, and you were the means to that end. As you walk through the grand halls of your new palace, you couldn't shake the image of your father, his face impassive as he watched his daughter, a living treaty being paraded through the streets. The procession was a beautiful lie. The public saw the gold, the jewels, the power. But you, the princess, saw the chains, the fear, the price of peace, and as the day drew to a close you realised that the most dangerous part of the spectacle was not the grand parade, but the quiet, private moments that were still to come, moments that would determine the fate of both you and your husband. The carriage has delivered you to your new palace, a gilded cage within a golden cage, and the grand procession is now a memory. The public show is over, but the private life, the real one, is just beginning. You're now inside your own harem, a world of women, eunuchs, and secrets. But unlike the Sultan's harem, this one is entirely your domain, and within these walls the whispers are louder, the eyes are sharper, and the stakes are even higher. A mainstream historical fact is that every Ottoman princess, upon her marriage, was given her own palace and her own harem. This was a symbol of her elevated status and her newfound autonomy. But this autonomy was a carefully crafted illusion. Your household, from the lowest slave to the highest-ranking eunuch, was beholden to you, the princess, and you, in turn, were beholden to the Sultan. Your harem, with its gardens and courtyards, was not just a home, it was a surveillance centre. Every person within its walls was a potential spy, a source of information for the Sultan's intelligence network. You couldn't trust your own shadow, much less the women who served you. A quirky, almost humorous detail is that the Sultan would often assign a senior eunuch to your household, a man who was ostensibly there to serve as your treasurer and protector. In reality, he was a direct line of communication to the Sultan, a man who would report on your every move, every visitor, and every whisper. You can almost imagine the man, a stoic figure in a silk robe, his eyes missing nothing, his ears catching every hushed conversation. He is your protector and your jailer, all in one, and you know without a doubt that your husband is also under his watchful eye. The whispers in your harem are not just idle gossip, they are intelligence, and they can and will be used against you or your husband if the need arises. Historians still argue whether the princesses of the Ottoman court were complicit in this system of surveillance. Did they see it as a necessary evil, a part of their role in the state? Or did they find clever ways to subvert the system, to send coded messages and to create a pocket of genuine privacy within their gilded prisons? You, the princess, are now a part of this debate. You must learn the unspoken rules, the subtle signals, the art of saying one thing while meaning another. Your survival, and your husband's, depends on it. The most dangerous whispers, of course, are not about you, but about your husband. He is a powerful man, but he is now a man under house arrest. His every visitor, every political meeting, every letter he receives is a matter of interest to your father. He knows that the people he trusts the most could be his downfall. His own men, the ones he brought with him from his old life, are now under your authority. He must be careful, so incredibly careful, to never give the Sultan a reason to question his loyalty. The whispers in your harem can turn an innocent conversation into a treasonous plot, a simple request into a sign of rebellion. You're not a passive observer in this. You're an active participant, a silent player in a game of life and death. You must be the one to decide what information to pass on, what to conceal, and what to use to your advantage. Your power is a subtle one, a power of information and influence. You can choose to protect your husband, to use your position to shield him from the Sultan's gaze, or you can choose to be a loyal daughter, to sacrifice your husband for the sake of your family's power. It's a choice no woman should ever have to make, but it's the choice you were born to. The harem, a place that was supposed to be a sanctuary, a place of peace and rest, is now a psychological battleground. The women who serve you are not your friends. They are rivals, informants, and players in a game they barely understand. The eunuchs who guard the doors are not just your protectors, they are your captors. And the beautiful gardens and courtyards, once a source of comfort, now feel like a beautiful prison yard. You're a princess, and you've been given everything, but you have lost the one thing that matters most, your freedom. Remember that crocodile dung sunscreen? A bad choice. Your choices now are far more consequential. A misplaced word could cost a man his life, and an entire dynasty could fall. This is the reality of your life, a reality that makes the luxury, the wealth, and the power feel like a heavy cloak, a suffocating weight that you can never take off. The whispers of the harem walls are a constant reminder of your precarious position, a testament to the Sultan's absolute power and his relentless need for control. And as you walk through your beautiful, solitary palace, you know that the whispers will never truly stop, not as long as you and your husband are still a part of this brutal game. You lie in your bed, in your new, beautiful palace. The night is quiet, save for the distant cry of a night bird and the soft rustle of your silk sheets. Your husband is in the next room, separated from you by a heavy ornate door. This is your first night in this new life, and the silence is more deafening than any sound could ever be. It gives you too much time to think, too much time to dwell on the reasons for this marriage, and on the chilling reality of your husband's new role. A mainstream historical fact is that the Ottoman sultans, in their quest to maintain absolute power, rarely married their daughters to men from other royal dynasties. Instead, they preferred to marry them to high-ranking officials from within their own court. But there was a further, more sinister qualification. The man had to be of a humble or even slave background. This wasn't about a meritocracy. It was about ensuring that the damat, the son-in-law, could never challenge the sultan's bloodline. This is the truth behind the tainted bloodline of your husband. He may be a powerful vizier, a man who has commanded armies, but he is not a prince. His blood is not imperial, and that, in your father's eyes, is a good thing. A quirky detail that historians have pieced together is that the Sultan would sometimes specifically seek out men of slave origin for these marriages. A man who was a slave had no family, no lineage, no power base other than the one given to him by the Sultan. His entire existence was a gift from the imperial family, and it could be taken away at any moment. He was a man who had everything to lose and nothing to fall back on. He was, in a sense, a perfect candidate for a royal husband, a man who could be raised up to the highest echelons of power, and then, with a simple flick of the wrist, be sent back into obscurity, or worse, into a grave. Historians still argue whether this was a strategic move to create a more efficient and meritocratic bureaucracy, or a paranoid obsession with preventing rivalries and consolidating power. You, the princess, are in a unique position to see the answer. Your husband may have earned his position through skill and hard work, but he is constantly and subtly reminded of his humble origins. He is a man who rose from nothing, and he knows that the descent back into nothingness is a very short fall. This constant reminder, this quiet dread, is a powerful tool of control. He can never truly be an equal to you or your family. He is a magnificent ornament, a powerful servant, but he can never ever be a king. This is the chilling reality of the tainted bloodline. Your husband's lack of a noble lineage is not an obstacle. It is a prerequisite. He is a man who is powerful but not too powerful. He is a man who is loyal, but his loyalty is born of fear, not of love. and as you lie awake listening to the silence of the night, you can almost feel the weight of this truth. The man in the next room is a stranger, but he is a stranger who is forever bound to you, a man who has traded his freedom for a gilded cage, a man whose life now hangs on a single fragile thread. Your father, the Sultan, is a master chess player. He has used you as a pawn, a living symbol of his power. He has used your husband as a pawn as well, a powerful piece that can be sacrificed at any time to ensure the security of the game, and you know deep down that the game is not over. The wedding was just the beginning. The real test is still to come, a test that will determine whether your husband will be able to navigate this treacherous court, and whether you will be able to survive as a powerless partner to a man who lives under a constant death sentence. This is not a fairy tale. There is no love, no happily ever after, no Prince Charming. There is only power, politics, and paranoia. The marriage is a contract, a piece of political theatre, and you are the star of the show. Your husband is a supporting actor, a man who has been given a script and told to follow it, or else. And as you fall into a fitful sleep, you know that the night is long and the future is uncertain. The only thing you can be sure of is that your life, and your husband's, will never truly be your own. Remember that crocodile dung sunscreen? A bad choice. A far more dangerous choice is your husband's decision to accept this marriage. He has traded his autonomy for power and his freedom for a gilded cage. He's a man who has everything and nothing, a man who is constantly reminded of his humble origins, and you, the princess, are a part of this cruel joke, a living testament to your father's ruthless power and his relentless need for control. The wedding was a public spectacle, a beautiful lie. The reality is far more terrifying, a reality that you and your husband must now live with every single day. The quiet of the palace is finally broken by the sound of footsteps. The heavy ornate door to your chamber swings open, and your husband enters. The air in the room, which was once still and cool, now feels thick with an unspoken tension. This is the moment, the ritual of the wedding chamber, a moment that in most cultures is a celebration of love and a beginning of a new life. But for you and your husband, it is a high-stakes test, a political act with profound and dangerous implications. A mainstream historical fact is that the consummation of the marriage was a matter of state importance. It wasn't just a private act. It was the final, official sealing of the political contract. The Sultan and his court needed to know that the marriage was, in every sense of the word, complete. This was a crucial part of the ritual, a testament to the fact that the two families were now one. But there was a more chilling aspect to this. The consummation was also a test of the husband's loyalty. A refusal to consummate the marriage for any reason would be seen as a direct act of defiance against the Sultan's will. It was a sign that the husband was not fully accepting his role as a subservient damat, and it could be grounds for his immediate execution. A quirky detail that has been passed down through generations of court gossip is that the Sultan would often have a trusted eunuch waiting outside the wedding chamber. This man was not there for protection, he was there for verification. After the consummation, the eunuch would be given a blood-stained cloth, a symbol of the bride's virginity and the groom's successful completion of the ritual. This was not a private matter. The cloth was then presented to the Sultan, a silent but powerful symbol of the marriage's official status. Imagine the pressure, the anxiety, the sheer terror of this moment. Your husband, a man who has commanded armies, is now in this room, knowing that his very life depends on his ability to perform a single act. Historians still argue whether this was a tradition born of a genuine need for political stability, or a form of psychological torture, a way to further humiliate and control the powerful men who married into the imperial family. You, the princess, don't have the luxury of intellectual debate. You're living the reality of it. You're not a bride. You're a piece of evidence, a living testament to your husband's loyalty and obedience. Your body is not your own. It is a political instrument, a vessel for a future heir, and a symbol of your father's unassailable power. The room is silent save for the soft sound of your breathing. Your husband stands before you, his face a mask of solemnity. He is a stranger, a man who has been a name, a title, a political figure. But now he is a man who is terrified. He knows that his life, his family's honour, and his entire future depend on the success of this single night. He's not here to court you, to woo you, or to fall in love. He's here to fulfill a duty, to complete a transaction, to seal a contract with his body and with yours. This is the chilling reality of the wedding night. It is not a celebration of love, but a ritual of power. It is a moment of profound vulnerability, not just for you, the princess, but for your husband, the powerful vizier. He is a man who is used to giving orders, to commanding armies, to being in control. But in this room, he is powerless. He's a man who has been stripped of his identity and his autonomy, and now he is forced to prove his subservience in the most intimate and humiliating way possible. You remember the whispers in the harem, the stories of princesses who had difficult wedding nights, of husbands who were too nervous or too old to perform their duty. The stories never had happy endings. The husbands were always removed from power and sometimes from life itself. This is the weight you carry on your shoulders. You're not just a woman, you're a living, breathing contract, a walking testament to your father's power. Your husband is not just a man, he's a man who has been chosen for a specific purpose, and if he fails to fulfill that purpose, the consequences will be dire. So as your husband takes a step towards you, you don't feel a flicker of romance or a hint of passion. You feel a deep, abiding dread. The consummation is not a physical act. It is a political one. It is a symbol of a new era, an era in which your life and your husband's are no longer your own. The ritual of the wedding chamber is not a beginning. It is a culmination of a lifetime of political manoeuvring, a final and terrifying act in a play that was written for you before you were even born. And as the night unfolds, you know that the true test is yet to come, a test that will determine whether your marriage will last, or whether it will be a short and tragic interlude in a long and bloody history. The wedding night is over. You're no longer just a princess. You are a married woman, a symbol of a sealed political contract. But the dread that you felt, the cold knot in your stomach, has not dissipated. It has only transformed. It is no longer a fear of the unknown, but a fear of the certain, the fear of the unspoken command. A mainstream historical fact is that in the Ottoman court the Sultan's will was absolute. His word was law, and his slightest whim could change the course of a man's life, or end it entirely. For a Damat, a son-in-law of the Sultan, this was not just a fact of life. It was a constant, terrifying reality. The Sultan did not need to give a direct order for an execution. He could simply let it be known that a particular man was no longer in his good graces, that his loyalty was in question, or that his usefulness had expired. This was the unspoken command, a chilling and effective way to deal with a powerful rival without creating a public spectacle. A quirky detail that has been passed down through generations is the use of symbolic gifts. The Sultan might send a beautiful kaftan to a pasha, a sign of his favour. But if the kaftan was an unusual colour, say, a deep red or a foreboding black, it was a silent warning. The pasha would know that his life was in danger, and he would have to find a way to regain the Sultan's favour or face the consequences. This was a form of political communication, a language of power and paranoia that everyone in the court understood implicitly. Your husband, the Grand Vizier, is now fluent in this language. He knows that every gift, every word, every gesture from the Sultan is a message, and he must interpret it correctly, or risk his life. Historians still argue whether this was a deliberate policy of psychological torment or a consequence of a deeply ingrained culture of fear. You, the princess, are in a unique position to witness the effects of this policy firsthand. You see the way your husband's face changes when a messenger arrives from the Sultan's palace. You see the way he holds his breath when a new decree is announced. He is a powerful man, but he is also a man who lives in a constant state of anxiety, a man who knows that his life can be taken from him at any moment, without warning and without reason. The most terrifying part of the unspoken command is its unpredictability. The Sultan's moods, his alliances, and his political needs can change in an instant. A man who was a loyal and trusted official one day could be a traitor the next. Your husband, who has just been given a beautiful palace and a princess for a wife, is now a man who is constantly looking over his shoulder, constantly worried that the Sultan's will has turned against him. His life is no longer his own. It is a borrowed one, and he knows that the lender can reclaim it at any time. You, the princess, are a part of this chilling reality. Your existence is a shield for your husband, a living testament to his continued usefulness. As long as you are his wife, as long as you are a symbol of his loyalty, he is safe. But you are also a double-edged sword. If you should ever fall out of favour with your father, or if your husband should ever displease him, you could be used as an instrument of his downfall. The Sultan could order the marriage annulled, or he could simply have your husband executed, leaving you a widow, a symbol of his absolute power and his ruthless will. This is the fear of the unspoken command. It is the fear of a world where words are not needed, where a single glance from the Sultan can seal a man's fate. It is the fear of a reality where power is not a possession, but a temporary loan, and where loyalty is not a virtue, but a fragile commodity. Your husband, a man who has achieved so much, is now a man who has lost the most important thing of all, his peace of mind. And you, the princess, are forced to live with him, to watch him, to wonder whether his life, and by extension your own, will be a long and prosperous one, or a short and tragic interlude in a history of violence and paranoia. The unspoken command is not a rumour, it is a fact of life in the Ottoman court. It is a psychological weapon, a tool of control that is more powerful than any army or any fortress. It is the reason why the most powerful men in the empire lived in a constant state of fear, a fear that was a part of their daily lives, a fear that was more terrifying than any battle or any political defeat. And as you lie awake at night, you can almost hear the whispered words of the eunuchs, the silent messages of the Sultan, and you know that the fear is not just in your husband's eyes, it is in your own heart as well. The wedding night, with its solemn rituals and profound anxiety, is a thing of the past. But the isolation that you feel, the profound loneliness of your new life, is a daily reality. You're a princess, a wife of the Grand Vizier, a woman with a magnificent palace, a retinue of servants, and an entire city that bows before you. But in a very real way, you're also utterly alone. A mainstream historical fact is that the Ottoman imperial princesses, once married, were often cut off from the daily life of the Sultan's harem. They were given their own palaces, their own staff and their own households, but they were also, in a sense, banished. While they could visit their father, the Sultan, and their family in the imperial palace, these visits were formal and infrequent. The easy camaraderie of the harem, the whispers and shared secrets of the women you grew up with, was now a distant memory. Your world, once a bustling community of women, was now a solitary fortress. A quirky detail is that these isolated palaces were often referred to as princely palaces or pasha's palaces, a subtle linguistic reminder that they were not true royal residences. These were homes for the Sultan's daughters, but they were also places of confinement, isolated from the centre of power and the intricate social web of the imperial court. You, the princess, were a rare exotic bird, admired from afar but never truly a part of the flock. You were a living symbol of a political contract, but you were also a woman, a human being who craved companionship and connection. Historians still argue whether this isolation was a deliberate strategy to prevent princesses from becoming too powerful, or simply a byproduct of a patriarchal society that saw married women as belonging to their husbands' households. You don't have to be a historian to feel the effects of this policy. You are a woman who's been raised in a world of constant human interaction, and now you are a woman who is surrounded by people, but connected to no one. Your husband is a stranger, a man who is as terrified as you are. Your servants are informants, and your only true family is miles away, behind the impenetrable walls of the Sultan's palace. This is the profound loneliness of the imperial bride. You're a woman who is famous, powerful and wealthy, but you're also a woman who is entirely alone. You have no friends, no confidants, no one to share your fears and anxieties with. The women who serve you are afraid of you, and they're also secretly spying on you. Your husband, a man who should be your partner, is a man who is terrified of you, of your power and of your family. You're a queen in a castle, but your castle is a prison. This isolation is a psychological tool, a way to further control you and your husband. You're both alone, and you're both entirely dependent on the Sultan for your safety and your future. You cannot trust anyone, and you cannot confide in anyone. You're a team, in a very fragile and dangerous way, but you are also two people who are caught in a web of fear and paranoia. The isolation of the imperial bride is not just a physical reality, it is a psychological one, a feeling of profound aloneness that makes your beautiful palace feel like a tomb. Remember that crocodile dung sunscreen? A bad choice. A far more perilous choice is to trust anyone in this new, lonely world. Your life, and your husband's, depends on your ability to navigate this treacherous landscape of power and paranoia. You're a woman who has been given everything, but you have lost the one thing that matters most: your ability to connect with other people, to be a human being, to be a person who is not just a symbol, but a person with hopes, dreams, and fears. The isolation of the imperial bride is a testament to the Sultan's absolute power. He has given you everything, but he has taken away your most basic human need, the need for connection. You are a living symbol of his wealth and his power, but you are also a living testament to his cruelty and his paranoia. And as you walk through the silent, empty halls of your beautiful palace, you know that the loneliness is a permanent part of your life, a feeling that will never truly go away. Not as long as you are a princess, and not as long as your life is a pawn in a game of power and control. You are a princess, a living symbol of Ottoman power, and a pawn in a game of politics. But you are also a woman who has been trained for one purpose: to serve the state through sacrifice. Your life, your happiness, your very person are all secondary to the needs of the dynasty. This is the silent service of sacrifice, a duty that you were born into, and a duty that you will carry until your last breath. A mainstream historical fact is that the Ottoman imperial princesses were expected to put the needs of the empire before their own. Their marriages were not a matter of personal choice or romantic love, they were a political necessity. If a prince from a rival kingdom needed to be appeased, a princess would be married to him. If a powerful vizier needed to be controlled, a princess would be given to him. This was the silent service of sacrifice, a duty that was never spoken of but was always understood. A quirky detail that has been lost to history is the existence of a specific kind of dowry for these princesses. It was a dowry of duty, a list of responsibilities that the princess was expected to fulfill. She was expected to be a loyal wife, a dutiful daughter, and a silent servant of the state. She was expected to produce a male heir, to be a source of stability, and to be a living testament to the Sultan's power. This was a duty that was never written down, but was understood by every princess who came before you. Historians still argue whether the princesses of the Ottoman court were truly victims of this system, or if they found ways to subvert it and to find personal happiness within their gilded cages. You don't have to be a historian to know the answer. You're a woman who is living the reality of this sacrifice. You're a woman who has been stripped of her autonomy, her freedom, and her right to choose her own path. You're a princess, but you're also a prisoner. This is the chilling reality of the silent service of sacrifice. You're a woman who has been given everything, but you have lost the one thing that matters most: your ability to be a person, to be a human being, to be a woman who can choose her own path. You're a living testament to your father's power, but you're also a living testament to his cruelty and his paranoia. And as you walk through the silent halls of your palace, you know that the sacrifice is a permanent part of your life, a duty that you will carry until your last breath. The silence of your sacrifice is the most profound part of it. You cannot complain. You cannot protest. You cannot even show your unhappiness. To do so would be an act of disloyalty, a sign that you are not fulfilling your duty to the state. You're expected to be a smiling, beautiful, and silent symbol of Ottoman majesty. And you're expected to do it without complaint, without a single whisper of protest. This is the life of a princess, a life of silent service and profound sacrifice. You are a woman who has been given everything, but you have lost the one thing that matters most: your freedom. You are a living testament to your father's power, but you're also a living testament to his cruelty and his paranoia. And as you walk through the silent halls of your palace, you know that the sacrifice is a permanent part of your life, a duty that you will carry until your last breath. The morning after your wedding, the palace is filled with the scent of fresh flowers and the sounds of servants moving quietly. The air, however, holds a different scent for you, the faint metallic scent of a deal struck in blood. You're no longer just a princess, you're a living dowry, a gift that came with not just wealth and prestige, but also a hidden and very real threat of death. A mainstream historical fact is that the dowries of Ottoman princesses were legendarily lavish. They included vast sums of money, priceless jewels, entire villages, and even lucrative tax revenues. This was a public display of the Sultan's immense wealth, a way to show the world that his power was absolute and his coffers were inexhaustible. But what wasn't as well known was that this dowry was a double-edged sword for the groom. It was a magnificent gift, but it was also a contract with a very specific and very deadly termination clause. A quirky detail that historians have pieced together from surviving palace records is that the contract for these dowries often included a clause that stipulated that if the marriage was dissolved for any reason, including the death of the groom, all the wealth would revert back to the imperial family. Imagine for a moment what this meant for your husband. He has just been given a magnificent palace, a fortune in gold and jewels, and the tax revenues from an entire province. He has become one of the wealthiest men in the empire overnight, but all of this wealth is on loan. It is not his to keep. It is a temporary gift, a loan that can be called in at any time for any reason. This is the curious case of the dowry of death. Historians still argue whether this was a deliberate strategy to prevent a powerful vizier from using his wealth to challenge the Sultan's authority, or if it was simply a way to ensure that the imperial family's wealth remained within the dynasty. You don't have to be a historian to see the psychological effect of this policy. Your husband, a man who has achieved so much, is now a man who is living with the constant threat of losing everything. He is a man who is terrified of making a single mistake, of saying a single wrong word, of falling out of favour with your father. He is a man who has been given everything, but he has nothing. This is the profound paradox of your life as an imperial bride. You are a living dowry, a gift of immense value, but you are also a symbol of a contract that could lead to your husband's demise. Your presence in his life is a source of power and prestige, but it is also a source of constant anxiety and fear. You are a woman who has been given everything, but you have lost the one thing that matters most: the ability to be a person, to be a human being, to be a woman who can choose her own path. Remember that crocodile dung sunscreen? A bad choice. A far more dangerous choice is your husband's decision to accept this marriage. He has traded his autonomy for power, and his freedom for a gilded cage. He is a man who has everything and nothing, a man who is constantly reminded of his humble origins, and you, the princess, are a part of this cruel joke, a living testament to your father's ruthless power and his relentless need for control. The dowry, which was a symbol of your wealth and your power, is now a symbol of your husband's precarity. It is a leash, a chain, a constant reminder that his life is not his own. The palace, the jewels, the tax revenues, they are all temporary. They are all on loan. And the lender, your father, can call in the loan at any time. This is the chilling reality of the dowry of death, a reality that makes your beautiful palace feel like a tomb and your life feel like a trap. The palace is still and silent, the opulence feeling more like a shroud than a celebration. Your husband, the powerful vizier, is a man who has achieved the highest honours. But his greatest honour, his marriage to you, is also the source of his profound and constant terror. He is now a damat, a son-in-law of the Sultan, a title that is both a symbol of immense power and a chilling reminder of his subordinate status. A mainstream historical fact is that the title of damat was more than just a name. It was a political designation. It meant that a man was not just a vizier or a pasha, but a part of the imperial family. This gave him immense prestige, a position of unparalleled influence in the court. He was now a relative of the Sultan, a man who had a direct line of communication to the throne, but this title also came with a heavy price. It meant that he was no longer an independent player in the game of politics. He was a piece on the Sultan's chessboard, a pawn to be moved and sacrificed at will. A quirky detail that historians still debate is the psychological effect of this title on the men who held it. Was it a source of genuine pride, a sense of having finally made it in the world, or was it a source of deep-seated anxiety, a constant reminder of their precarious position? You can almost see the internal struggle in your husband's eyes. He's a man who has risen from nothing to the pinnacle of power, and now he is a man who is constantly looking over his shoulder, constantly worried that his success will be his undoing. Historians still argue whether the title of damat was a reward for loyalty or a gilded leash for a powerful rival. You, the princess, are in a unique position to see the answer. Your husband may have a new title, a new palace, and a new wife, but he has lost his most important possession, his freedom. He's a man who is now forever bound to your family, a man who's a living testament to your father's power and his relentless need for control. He is a vizier, a pasha, a general, but in the end he is just a princess's husband, a man who is defined not by his own achievements, but by his relationship to you, and through you, to the Sultan. This is the profound paradox of his life. He is a man who has everything, but he has nothing. He's a man who has achieved so much, but he has lost his most important possession, his autonomy. He's a man who is now forever a part of the imperial family, but he is also a man who is a perpetual outsider, a man who can never truly be an equal to you or your brothers. He is a man who is both a member of the family and a servant of the state. Remember that crocodile dung sunscreen? A bad choice. A far more dangerous choice is your husband's decision to accept this marriage. He has traded his autonomy for power and his freedom for a gilded cage. He is a man who has everything and nothing, a man who is constantly reminded of his humble origins. And you, the princess, are a part of this cruel joke, a living testament to your father's ruthless power and his relentless need for control. The title of Dammit, which was a symbol of your wealth and your power, is now a symbol of your husband's precarity. It is a leash, a chain, a constant reminder that his life is not his own. The palace, the jewels, the tax revenues, they're all temporary. They're all on loan. And the lender, your father, can call in the loan at any time. This is the chilling reality of the Dammat's title, a reality that makes your beautiful palace feel like a tomb and your life feel like a trap. The curious case of the princess's husband is a testament to the Sultan's absolute power. He has given a man everything, but he has taken away his most basic human need, his freedom. Your husband is a living symbol of his wealth and his power, but he is also a living testament to his cruelty and his paranoia. And as you walk through the silent, empty halls of your beautiful palace, you know that the title of Dammat is not just a name. It is a brand, a mark of a man who has been chosen for a specific purpose, and if he fails to fulfill that purpose, the consequences will be dire. The heavy silence of your new palace is broken by the arrival of a delegation from the Sultan's palace. It's not your father, the Sultan himself, but his mother, the formidable Valide Sultan, the Queen Mother. She is the most powerful woman in the empire, and her presence in your home is a sign that your life, and your husband's, is about to be put under a new kind of scrutiny. A mainstream historical fact is that the Valide Sultan held immense power within the Ottoman court. She was the head of the harem, the chief advisor to the Sultan, and a powerful political figure in her own right. Her influence was not just over the women of the harem, but over the Sultan himself, and through him, over the entire empire. She was a woman who had navigated the treacherous world of court politics and had come out on top. She was a master of intrigue, a woman who could make or break a man's career, and a woman who was a powerful ally and a terrifying enemy. A quirky detail that historians still puzzle over is the exact nature of the Valide Sultan's relationship with her son, the Sultan. Was it a relationship of genuine affection and trust, or was it a relationship of mutual dependence, a power dynamic that was both loving and utterly ruthless? You can almost see the complexity of this relationship in the way your father, the Sultan, treats his mother. He bows to her, he listens to her advice, he respects her power. But you also know that he is a man who is terrified of being seen as weak, a man who is constantly looking for ways to consolidate his own power. The Valide Sultan is a source of immense power for him, but she is also a potential rival, a woman who could, if she chose, turn the court against him. Historians still argue whether the Valide Sultan was a force for good or evil. Was she a protector of the women and children of the harem, or was she a ruthless political operator who would do anything to maintain her own power? You, the princess, are now in a unique position to see the answer. Your mother-in-law, the Valide Sultan, is a woman who has come to your palace to inspect your life, to see if you are a worthy daughter of her son, and to see if your husband is a worthy son-in-law. Her eyes miss nothing. She sees the tension in your husband's jaw, the fear in your eyes, the quiet despair that has settled over your palace. This is the unseen influence of the harem. It is a world of women, but it is also a world of power, a world where a woman's power is not measured in jewels or silks, but in her ability to influence the men who rule the empire. The Valide Sultan is the ultimate example of this. She's a woman who has no official title, no formal power, but she's a woman who is feared and respected by every man in the court. She's a woman who can whisper a word in her son's ear, and a powerful vizier could be executed, and a powerful rival could be elevated. Your husband, the Grand Vizier, is now under the watchful eye of two of the most powerful people in the empire. The Sultan, your father, and the Valid Sultan, your mother-in-law. He is a man who is now subject to the whims of not one, but two, powerful and unpredictable forces. He's a man who has everything, but he has nothing. He's a man who is constantly reminded of his humble origins, a man who is constantly looking over his shoulder, constantly worried that his success will be his undoing. Remember that crocodile dung sunscreen? A bad choice. A far more dangerous choice is to make an enemy of the Valid Sultan. She is a woman who is both a protector and a predator. A woman who can make your life a living hell or a peaceful and prosperous one. She's a woman who is a living testament to the power of the harem, a power that is unseen, unspoken, and utterly ruthless. And as she leaves your palace, you feel a deep sense of relief, but also a new kind of dread. You have survived her scrutiny, but you know that she will be watching, a silent, powerful force in the background of your life. The passage of time in your new palace is marked not by the changing seasons, but by a different kind of cycle. It is the relentless, suffocating cycle of expectations. The whispers from the harem, the subtle glances from your husband's staff, the silent questions in the eyes of the eunuchs, they all lead to one thing. You're a princess, a wife, a symbol of a dynasty, and you have one primary duty: to produce a male heir. A mainstream historical fact is that dynastic continuity was the cornerstone of the Ottoman Empire. The Sultanate was passed down from father to son, and the continuation of the bloodline was of paramount importance. For a princess, her primary role, the very reason for her marriage, was to produce a male child who would be a potential successor to the throne, or at the very least a powerful member of the imperial family. The pressure to conceive was immense, a silent, pervasive weight that settled over your palace like a shroud. A quirky detail that has been lost to history is the existence of a specific kind of prayer and ritual, performed by the women of the harem to ensure a male heir. They would light candles, burn special incense, and recite ancient verses, all in a desperate attempt to influence the will of God and the outcome of the marriage. These rituals were not a sign of piety. They were a sign of profound desperation, a testament to the immense pressure that was placed on the princess and her husband. The pressure was not just on you, but on your husband as well. His career, his life, his very existence as a powerful vizier was now tied to your ability to produce a male heir. If you failed, he would be seen as a man who could not fulfill his duty, a man who was no longer useful to the state. And a man who was no longer useful to the state was a man who could be easily discarded. Historians still argue whether the failure to produce a male heir was a cause for divorce or a justification for a husband's execution. Was a princess who gave birth only to daughters seen as a personal failure, a woman who had let the dynasty down? Or was her husband, the man who was supposed to be a source of strength and continuity, blamed for the failure? You, the princess, don't have the luxury of intellectual debate. You are living the reality of it. You're a woman who is now defined not by your own achievements, but by your ability to produce a son. Your body is no longer your own. It is a vessel for the continuation of the dynasty. The weight of these expectations is a psychological burden that is heavier than any jeweled crown. You're a woman who has been raised in a world of luxury and privilege, but you have been trained for one purpose: to give birth to a son. Your every waking moment is now consumed by this thought. Every meal is a regimen of fertility-boosting foods. Every prayer is a plea for a son. Every conversation with your husband is a subtle and unspoken discussion about your duty. You are a woman who is living under a microscope, and your every move is scrutinized for a sign of a potential pregnancy. This is the chilling reality of the weight of expectations. You are a woman who is now defined by her ability to reproduce, a woman who is a living testament to the Sultan's power and his relentless need for control. Your happiness, your security, and your very life are now inextricably linked to this one single purpose. If you succeed, you will be celebrated, a queen in your own right, a powerful woman with a son who could one day be sultan. But if you fail, you will be a failure, a woman who has let the dynasty down, and a woman who has put her husband's life in mortal danger. Remember that crocodile dung sunscreen? A bad choice. A far more dangerous choice is your husband's decision to accept this marriage. He has traded his autonomy for power, and his freedom for a gilded cage. He's a man who has everything and nothing, a man who is constantly reminded of his humble origins. And you, the princess, are a part of this cruel joke, a living testament to your father's ruthless power and his relentless need for control. The weight of expectations, which was a symbol of your wealth and your power, is now a symbol of your husband's precarity. It is a leash, a chain, a constant reminder that his life is not his own. The palace, the jewels, the tax revenues, they are all temporary, they are all on loan, and the lender, your father, can call in the loan at any time. This is the chilling reality of the weight of expectations, a reality that makes your beautiful palace feel like a tomb and your life feel like a trap. The wedding, the anxieties, the constant pressure to produce a male heir, it all fades into a new kind of routine. Time, once a panicked sprint, now feels like a slow, languid river. You are a married woman, a mother of children, a mistress of your own palace. The initial fear has been replaced by a different kind of reality, a life after the curtain falls on the grand spectacle of your wedding. A mainstream historical fact is that the lives of Ottoman princesses were not all tragedy and confinement. While their marriages were political and their initial years were filled with pressure, many princesses found a way to carve out a life for themselves, to find a measure of autonomy and influence. They became patrons of the arts and architecture, commissioning mosques, fountains and charitable institutions. They wielded immense power through their own vast wealth and their connection to the Sultan, their father. A quirky detail that is often overlooked is that a princess who was widowed could often remarry, and her second marriage was a far more personal affair, often to a man of her own choosing. A widowed princess was no longer a pawn. She was a powerful player in her own right, a woman who had survived the most dangerous game in the world. Historians still argue whether this newfound autonomy was a deliberate strategy by the Sultan to reward loyal daughters, or if it was simply a byproduct of a system that had no way to control a powerful woman who was no longer a commodity to be traded. You, the princess, are now living this reality. You are a woman who has endured the wedding night, the constant fear, the pressure to produce a male heir. And now you are a woman who is learning to live in her own world, a world that is still under the shadow of the Sultan, but a world that is also, in a very real way, your own. This is the bittersweet reality of a life after the curtain falls. The terror is gone, but the scars remain. You are a woman who has been shaped by fear and sacrifice, a woman who has been stripped of her freedom and her right to choose. But you are also a woman who has survived, a woman who has found a way to thrive in a system that was designed to control her. Your palace, which was once a prison, is now a sanctuary. Your husband, who was once a terrifying stranger, is now a partner in a shared struggle for survival. And your children, whether they are boys or girls, are a source of immense joy and a testament to your resilience. The life of a princess is not a fairy tale. It is a story of sacrifice, fear, and profound isolation. But it is also a story of survival, of resilience, and of a quiet, unseen triumph. You are a woman who has been given everything, but you have lost the one thing that matters most, your ability to be a person, to be a human being, to be a woman who can choose her own path. But you have also found a new kind of freedom, a freedom that is not given to you, but a freedom that you have earned through your own endurance and your own strength. Remember that crocodile dung sunscreen, a bad choice, but your life, which was once a series of perilous choices, is now a testament to your ability to survive and to thrive in a world that was designed to destroy you. You are a woman who has been through hell and has come out on the other side. You are a princess, a mother, a wife, and a living testament to the power of the human spirit. The life after the curtain falls is a testament to the power of the harem, the power of the women who lived within its walls, and the power of a woman who can find a way to thrive in a world that was designed to control her. You are a woman who is living proof that a gilded cage can be a sanctuary, and that a life of sacrifice can be a life of triumph. And as you walk through the gardens of your palace, you know that the journey is not over, but the most dangerous part of it is behind you. The sun sets over Istanbul, casting a final golden glow on the minarets and domes that define the city's ancient skyline. You're no longer a frightened young bride, but a woman of a certain age, your hair threaded with silver, your face etched with the quiet wisdom that comes from a life lived under the shadow of the sword. The ghosts of your golden prison, however, still linger. They are in the hushed corridors of your palace, in the silent gaze of the eunuchs, and in the way the wind whispers through the cypress trees in your garden. They are a permanent part of your legacy, a bittersweet reality that you have come to accept. A mainstream historical fact is that many of the most famous Ottoman princesses, like Esma Sultan or Mihrima Sultan, left behind legacies that went far beyond their marriages. They were builders, patrons of the arts, and powerful political figures who, in their later years, wielded a level of influence that few men could ever dream of. Their wealth was immense, and their connection to the Sultan gave them a unique position of power, but a quirky detail that is often lost in the grandeur of their achievements is the price they paid for this power. They were living, breathing monuments to a system that was both brilliant and utterly ruthless. They were the ghosts of their golden prisons, women who had survived a life of profound sacrifice and had found a way to thrive but never truly escape. Historians still argue whether the later years of these princesses were a time of genuine happiness or a quiet, resigned acceptance of their fate. Were they truly free? Or were they just living in a larger, more beautiful cage? You, the aged princess, are the answer to that question. You are a woman who has endured a life that was not her own, a woman who has been a pawn in a game of power and politics. You have seen your husband rise and fall, you have raised children who are both a source of joy and a potential source of danger, and you have survived. But the scars of your youth, the ghosts of your golden prisons, are a part of you. They are in the way you hold yourself, in the way you speak, in the way you look at the world. Your life is a living testament to the paradox of power and freedom. You are a woman who has everything, but you have nothing. You are a woman who is famous, powerful, and wealthy, but you are also a woman who is utterly alone. Your life is a beautiful lie, a public spectacle that masks a private reality of fear, sacrifice, and profound loneliness. And as you sit in your garden, listening to the birdsong and the gentle rustle of the leaves, you know that the ghosts of your golden prisons will never truly leave you. They're a part of your legacy, a part of your story, a part of who you are. The journey you have been on, from a frightened young bride to a wise old woman, is a testament to your resilience. You are a woman who has been stripped of her freedom and her right to choose, but you have found a way to live, to thrive, to find a measure of happiness in a world that was designed to control you. You are a living monument to the silent service of sacrifice, a woman who has endured the weight of expectations, the fear of the unspoken command, and the isolation of the imperial bride. And you have come out on the other side, a survivor in a world that was not made for you. The final image of your life is not a grand palace or a jeweled crown. It is a quiet moment in a garden, a moment of peace and reflection. You are a woman who has lived a life of profound sacrifice, and you are a woman who has found a measure of peace in the end. The ghosts of your golden prisons, however, will always be there. A quiet, constant reminder of the price you paid for your gilded life. They are a part of your story, a part of your legacy, and a part of who you are. And so, as the final echoes of our story fade into the night, let the imagery of this world, both magnificent and cruel, drift away like the last wisps of incense smoke. Remember the quiet dread, the gilded cages, and the women who found a way to exist, to build, and to influence from within their beautiful solitary confinement. Their lives were not the stuff of fairy tales, but they were a testament to the enduring human spirit, a spirit that can find light even in the darkest corners of history. Let that be a calming thought as you let go of the tension from our journey. The world we've explored is a distant one, a chapter closed. Now, as the fan hums gently in the background, imagine those ancient palaces growing still. The rustle of silk is no more, the whispered intrigues have long since faded. All that remains is the silent weight of a history that reminds us that even in a world of absolute power, the human heart, with its capacity for resilience and quiet endurance, can find a way to leave its own indelible mark. Just breathe deeply. The story is over now. The night is quiet, and so are your thoughts. Let the stillness settle around you like a soft blanket. Let go of the past and ease into the present.